Que pasa, mi amigos? It is I, Nima. I wanted to talk about a game that just came out recently that I've been very excited about. Um, Road 96. It got announced at last year's Indie, and I was I saw it and I was like, this is my kind of game. Now, I kind of like the Telltale games, the Stranger Things, games like that that are more choose your own adventure, if you will. And I saw that that's exactly what this was, mixed in with some other really interesting components. So I just kind of noted it, and I thought, well, I want to have that in the back of my mind. So whenever we see new games coming out, just kind of look for that game. I wasn't like overly hyped for it. Just a game that I thought I would keep on my mental list of games to pick up when it comes out. Then at E3 this last year, we finally got a date for it. And I'll be honest, all 2021, I was kind of looking for it. Like, when's this game gonna drop? And finally getting a date. It was later than I would have liked it to be, it being here in mid to late August, but ultimately I think it was a good time for it to drop. August has been a little bit of a dry month for the Nintendo Switch, and so it really kind of fell at a good time when someone like me, or maybe someone who keeps up with a lot of the Switch games, can take that time and really sink some time into this game because it's really what it deserves. The story of this game is, I mean, it's everything. It is the story, but it's very in depth, and there's a lot to it. Um, the main narrative, I would say, is that you are a teenager who's trying to escape a country that is ran by a dictator, and that in itself doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, um, but it's the characters you meet along the way, and the fact that it's not just one expedition that you go on. In fact, for me, at least one of the expeditions I went on, my character died. And you're actually told really early on in the game, you have like a 1% chance of actually crossing the border and leaving this country that you're in. So there's a lot to it. But you kind of have to focus on your stamina and your money because towards the end you're going to need all of that, whether it be to pay off a guard or to traverse some like really sketchy terrain, something that you're going to need all that. So they give you the opportunity throughout the expedition to build those things up, rest when you can rest, eat when you can, take on jobs, and it seems like they pack a lot into this because each expedition is like 20 to 30 minutes. It's pretty short. The interesting thing about that is while you're kind of gaining those resources and trying to pick that stuff up, you're also meeting a really, really cool cast of characters. I think like every one of them, even like the quote unquote bad guys or less savory individuals, are still really interesting, and they're really fleshed out because on each expedition, you learn more and more about these characters, and you kind of understand that there is more to the story than just your one character escaping this country. In fact, you learn that there's more about the incident that caused the country to have a border that is as secured as it is, meaning they don't want their citizens to leave. It's very, very interesting, and there's a lot there. I don't want to say too much because that is, in fact, the game. Uh, you know, the other thing that I would say too about the game, because a lot of people, especially some of the Telltale games, I remember there being an issue with it just being too there's almost too much reading. There's almost too much of this stuff going on. I know like that's the whole point of the game. It's a choose your own adventure kind of game. It's text driven. You know, your replies and your choices directly affect the game. I mean, at every step of the way. But it can get a little overwhelming. I do remember like there was a few Telltale games that I remember it being kind of an issue where it's like, okay, you're reading all this and you're going over it and it's like, okay, whatever. It's not that important. And this game, Not only would I say the writers of this game do it well, because for one, the dialogue that you have in a lot of ways is how people talk. The writers who wrote the scripts and wrote this entire game out were they did this really, really well. It's short, sweet. It's got the information that you want to know and that you need to know, without like a lot of fluff and no elitist, high-minded vernacular thrown in there just to prove that they're good writers. None of that was really in here. We can tell they're good writers by the story arc. We can tell that they're good writers by the way the characters are fleshed out throughout the game. Every part of that is already on stage for this game, and then they break it up with little mini games, which are also amazing. There's some where, especially there's two characters that I really love named Stan and Mitch, and they have a motorcycle. And there's a mini game with them where you're literally flying down the highway trying to avoid um, head-on-head collisions while you're chasing somebody. So it goes from that to small computer games, to playing a tuba. There's a ton of like little mini games that kind of break up some of that. Not to mention just the mini game in itself of the point and choose. Like some of the jobs that you take on, you're given choices, and you know exactly how those choices are going to directly affect your current mission. And as you're playing the game, you understand that you have like a what they say a 1% chance of actually crossing the border and kind of beating the game. So your whole goal is to gain as much money and as much food. So sometimes you have to play a game that you don't want to play, and that is to make decisions that are good for your character, but don't really go into the direction that you feel. Um, so there is a lot here, and I think that they did just such a great job with this game. The graphics are pretty good. It's not gonna be a graphic powerhouse kind of game. That's just even if it was done on a more powerful system, that's not really what this game's about. I it being it, it's said to being taken place in 1996. I kind of wish there was a little bit more music from that era, and I'll be honest, there's not as much as I would like. I do like how you can interact with a lot of different things. I like how you can there's an open worldness to it to an extent at each level that you're at, and you kind of just explore, and you can find more and more out about the world as you talk to people. And it's just a very deep story. I really don't want to go too far into it because I think that it, it'll kind of ruin it for somebody who's really interested in this game. But again, I would say, I would definitely advise picking it up, and partially because of the fact that if you were interested in it, but you thought like maybe it's a little too heady, a little bit too much narrative, it's not that. Um, it is in and of itself that point and click, choose your own adventure kind of game, but kind of sped up, which I really like. I like how it soaks you in for like 20, 30 minutes, and then you're done, and then you kind of want to go back in again. As where some games will kind of keep you reading and reacting for a very, very long time, and you're kind of like, you get to a point where you're like, I want to see the end. I don't know. I'm just kind of done with this. I'm tired of reading. That's not what this game does. Now, here's the bad things about it, or the just divisive things. We'll say that. Um, the people who made this game, they had some real cojones on them. Like I believe they're kind of insane. In the fact that, for one, you're trying to make a game and you wanted to appeal to a mass amount of people. One of the things you shouldn't do is make the choose your own adventure kind of game. These kind of games in themselves are kind of divisive because a lot of people aren't big fans of them. There isn't the platforming, the shooting, the Metroidvania aspect of that kind of game. It's to some people it's kind of dull, to be honest. Um, it's I don't feel it's that way, but a lot of people do. Not to mention the fact that the game itself and the narrative of the game is very political. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who see something in this game that I don't believe is there, but I think they're going to create that narrative. And whether it be for good or for bad, I just think that's going to be an issue, especially right now, where we are in this world where we are incredibly tribalistic. And if we see something that might be anti our team, then we immediately jump out against it. And I can say being objective in that aspect, that's not what this game really does. It doesn't choose a side. And yes, there is a narrative of red versus blue kind of thing, but they don't saying who red is or who blue is. And at the same time, your character is almost like an anarchist, or they're pro red or pro blue because you choose what your character is and how they react. You choose all of that. You're not forced a narrative. And every decision that you make can impact if you are pro red, pro blue, or just an anarchist, and or just a person just trying to get the hell out of here. And that's the other thing too. Um, a lot of it seems to be characters in the game that don't really identify with anything political. They just want to get the hell out of here. Or, as in my favorite characters, Stan and Mitch, they just love being thieves in this world. And that's pretty cool too. So there's a lot. I just think that, if you were going to make this game, uh, rather you like it or you dislike it, you have some testicular fortitude to make a game like this that probably honestly won't sell well. And when it does sell, people are going to take a political narrative to it, and they're either going to hate it just because of what they see in it, or they're going to love it because they think it's some kind of like, you know, truth teller or resistance kind of game. And again, I don't think it's any of those things. I really don't. Um, I think if you look at it objectively, you'll see it as the story that it's meant to be, a story. And you definitely, you work within that world that these people created. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on the game. I would say I'm a big fan of it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy the aspect of playing through multiple characters and all of those characters not really having a backstory at all. You're not when you start playing the game, you're not given a direction to, hey, this is how that character is going to react. You're giving a faceless character. You have an age, money, and that's about it. And then put into the role of trying to make it on your adventure. So you really create this character while you're playing it. You make that character design how you see that character playing out. I've done it in multiple ways. I've had one who was very like pro government. I've had one that was, very anarchist, and one that was very, pro blue, gone both ways with them, or all three, and then just seeing how they played out. And I got to see, how the other characters reacted to it, and it was very interesting and very cool. So I really like that aspect. I also like the fact that when they do it in that kind of sense where it's, multiple characters, it doesn't feel like the game's too long. You actually feel like the game's a little short. You actually want more of it. So that was really cool as well. The other thing I would say too, the music. It supposedly taking in 1996. I would like to hear more like music from the 90s. And I understand this is an indie company and they probably don't have the money to license those songs. It would have been cool, but I understand why they couldn't. Aside from that, like, yeah, I would definitely suggest this game to anyone. It's a lot of fun. If you're on the fence about getting it, I would definitely suggest getting it. I have not beaten it fully. I have actually gotten across the border. I'll say that. But I haven't beaten it all the way, and I don't know if it's possible because of just how many options there are, how much there is to flesh out. But it's a game I'm going to keep going back to and playing through over and over again. Honestly, just to like meet up with Stan and Mitch again because they're awesome. They're so hilarious. I just love that aspect of the game. Anyway, guys, that's my thought on the game. If you are thinking about it, it's like $20, and there is so much game here, so much game. It's definitely worth a pickup. Anyway, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Have you thought about picking it up? Have you played it? How do you think about the divisiveness? I don't want to get into a political conversation because that's just not what I do this for. Many people don't know I actually come from the background of political news, and that's what I did. And I kind of do currently, but I hate it. Honestly, I really don't like it. And that's why I love video games, because it's not that. But I am curious about what your thoughts are on the the thought of making a game like this in this environment that we live in, and maybe taking those chances that I don't know. I'm glad they did, but I do think it's that they're walking into a minefield for sure. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. Take care.